Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The purpose of this video is to understand the role of interest in a capitalist economy. Now, since in an Islamic economy, interest is not permissible, we need to find alternatives for interest. To be able to devise the alternatives, we need to understand the major roles that are served by interest in a capitalist economy. So in this regard, we have Samuelson, who in his textbook on economics mentions two functions of interest. The first function of interest is that it rations scarce capital in view of the priority of the investment projects. And number two, it induces people to indulge in capital formation. So let's understand these. The first purpose of interest is to act as a filter. So imagine you have one bank in an economy and people have saved $5 million in that account in that bank, and then there are 10 projects each worth $1 million. So there is a demand which exceeds the supply of money available. So the demand is for 10 million, however only 5 million is available. So how do we allocate or ration this 5 million amongst these 10 people? So the interest helps to serve as a benchmark to ration the $5 million. So let's say out of the 10 projects, 5 projects are giving an expected return of 15%. So 5 projects are giving 15%, and let's say the remaining 5 projects are offering 8% expected return, and the interest rate is 10%. If the interest rate is 10%, then these 5 projects with 8% return will be eliminated. So the $5 million will go to the 5 people who have projects that will generate 15%. So the interest rate has helped to eliminate some of the weaker projects and has helped to allocate the money to the best projects in an economy. So that's the first role of interest. Now, of course, as we talk about these roles and functions of interest, we need to think about alternatives in the context of an Islamic economy, which we will see in a later video. But it's first important to understand properly all the functions of interest. The second function of interest is that of a motivator. Now, it helps in motivates in capital formation. So, what is capital formation? Capital formation is the investment in productive assets such as plants, not plants as in the trees and plants, but factories and machines and equipment. So so interest helps in the development of factories and plants and vehicles and machines and so on. And these, of course, increase the productive capacity of any economy. How does that happen? Now, if the interest rate, let's say, is 5%, people have a choice. So let's say you have consumers here, you have regular people. They have, let's say, $5,000 in there with them. They have a choice to keep the money with them or spend it. So if they see 5% being offered by banks as interest, they would deposit the $5,000 to get the 5% interest. Now the amount of savings available will go up in an economy, and then you have savings of $5,000 in the bank. Now these $5,000 of course can be lent out to businesses for capital formation. So a borrower would come, and then let's say a project has a expected return of 10%. So the bank would lend this $5,000 to this business, and then that would lead to capital formation, that would lead to the development of machines and equipment that would increase the GDP and growth and productive capacity of the economy. So these are the two roles, two functions mentioned by Samuelson. The first is the filter, and the second is the motivator, which helps to develop productive assets in an economy. Now, again, we need to think about the motivation. So, in an Islamic economy, in the absence of interest, how do you motivate people to save? How do you motivate people to channel the savings to investment? Is it through banks? Is it through Islamic banks? Are there other alternatives? So we need to think about all these issues. Okay, now let's look at some more arguments and functions of interest rates. The next one is called the positive time preference. And the idea is that individuals have a positive time preference. What that means is people have a natural tendency to prefer present consumption over future consumption. So people like to consume now, and if there is no motivation, they would spend all their money today and they would not save for the future. Now you need to understand that in a capitalist economy, savings are essential because savings lead to investment, and then the investment leads to the formation of capital or the increase in the productive capacity of the economy. So what the economists are trying to do is increase the savings so that can increase the investments. So people have a tendency to prefer present consumption. So what is the incentive to save? Now, based on one perspective, interest rate provides the incentive to save. So you can, if you save $100 today, you can get a 10% interest on that. So that motivates you to spend your save your $100 instead of spending it today. So interest rate is the motivation or the incentive to save. And of course, as we discussed in the previous slide, this helps to accumulate and form capital in the economy. So that's similar to the previous argument, but this is phrased in different terms in terms of the positive time preference. So whenever you hear this term positive time preference, it simply means that people prefer present over the future, and that's the key point. And this presentism, or the focus on the present, is overcome through interest, whereby people sacrifice some of their consumption. They delay the consumption, they put the money in the savings account to earn interest, and then so that they can get more money in the future and they can consume more in the future. And if interest rate is zero, but people have positive time preference, what happens? People will transfer future income to present consumption. So what it means is, if there is no interest, people would like to spend all of their money today instead of saving for the future. And the savings would fall. If savings fall, then the capital accumulation falls, the productive capacity of the economy falls, and the economy suffers. So saving is an essential part of the capitalist economy. So let's move on to the next one. The next function of interest in a capitalist economy is what is called as the marginal disutility of saving. So the idea is that once you start saving, then after a certain point, there is diminishing utility, i.e., there is dissatisfaction from each unit of extra saving. So as total savings grow, each additional dollar saved feels more painful in terms of the consumption which you have to forego. So let's say you are saving for your emergency needs. So in the first year you save like $10,000, and then your emergency needs are fulfilled. So you don't have any other needs. You don't have any kids or family, so there's no other commitment. You have a saving of $10,000 in your account, and that's sufficient for your emergency. So in year two, um, you don't have any need for a saving. So typically, what you would do is in the next year, you would spend 100% of your income. You would not save because there is no need for the saving. So here is the role of interest. So what happens is interest comes in, and then the interest incentivizes you to save more and consume less. And that's how the interest helps to overcome this dissatisfaction with saving. So again, this is very similar to the previous idea that people in general, they have a positive time preference. They want to consume today. If, however, you want to delay the consumption, it has to be incentivized, and interest serves as an incentive to delay the consumption and to save. And as we said, saving is essential for capital formation and growth of the economy. So each extra dollar saved is equal to one less dollar for consumption today. So saving and consumption are inverse. So the more you save, the less you consume. So as savings grow larger, giving up one more dollar of consumption feels harder. So there's no real need of saving after a certain point, and extra saving actually causes disutility or dissatisfaction, and that's overcome by interest. Another function of interest is to compensate for inflation. So what happens in an inflationary environment is that the people start consuming more and saving less. And as we said, savings are very important for capital formation and increasing the productive capacity of the economy. So anything which reduces the savings has to be combated and offset. So people think that why do we save when money will be worth less in the future? So they start consuming more and saving less. So one of the functions of interest is to change that behavior. So interest compensates for the loss of purchasing power. So for example, if the expected inflation is around 10% in an economy, then saving $100 today will make the $100 worth only $90 in next year in real terms. So if that saving is invested at 10%, then at the end of the year, a person would have $110 in his account, and then basically he will not be affected by inflation. And if the interest rate is more than 10%, of course, the person would have even more money, which will cover the inflation as well as some profit for his own future consumption. So we can see that inflation is offset by interest rate, and interest compensates and preserves the value of the savings. So that's the role of the interest in a capitalist economy, to fight and combat inflation. Now, in an Islamic economy without interest, what happens is if a person has $100 at the beginning of the year, then and if the inflation is 10%, his savings will lose real value during inflation. And there is no automatic protection mechanism because the interest doesn't exist in an Islamic economy. So interest is not a tool, and then it's not possible. So we need to find alternative ways to protect the savers' money from inflation. So one of the ideas suggested in the literature on Islamic economics is the cost of living index. So in case of inflation or high inflation in an economy, the government steps in and basically credits the accounts of the savers. So let's say in an economy, the cost of living index inflation is 10% at the end of the year. So the people have lost 10% value because their $100 savings is only worth $90 now. So the government steps in and credits the account of the depositors, of the savers, so that they still have $110, and which is basically preserving the real value of their original $100. So that's one mechanism in the absence of interest that has been suggested. And of course, we need to think about other alternatives. So these are some of the functions of interest in a capitalist economy. And to be able to really replace interest, we need to think about alternatives which help to increase the savings in an Islamic economy, to promote capital formation, to increase the productive capacity of Islamic economy, as well as serve the other functions that we've looked at. So we cannot just say that we eliminate interest. So that's eliminating interest by administrative fiat or by government decree is only one part of the solution. The other part is to fulfill the functions of the interest in an Islamic economy. Inshallah, we'll delve into the Islamic alternatives for the interest in future videos. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat box below. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.